The problem is, the problem is, and this is the crux of the matter I wanted to bring up, is that if the awakening to enlightened awareness and becoming stabilized in the awakening to enlightened awareness is the most important thing on our agenda. If we really want to know what the Buddha knew, we want to know what Ramana Maharshi knew, we want to know what the great Sri Aurobindo knew, from our own experience, not just from reading books about it, then there comes a point, sooner or later, if we're sincere enough, where the Absolute will reveal itself to us. If we're sincere enough about this, sooner or later, the Absolute will reveal itself to us. And when that happens, it stops us in our tracks and brings us to our knees. Because we can't imagine how profound it is. We just can't even begin to imagine it. And at least in my understanding, the human mind and our cognitive functions don't have the capacity to interpret that kind of experience in such a way that will help us to understand it. It's too big, it's too profound. It's happening in multiple frameworks and multiple dimensions that our mind simply cannot grasp. So when this moment comes, we're swept off our feet, brought to our knees in a state of awe and wonder at the majesty of it all. Because when this kind of thing happens to you, you know it's happening. You understand your experience in a way that we could call transrational. It's beyond the mind's ability to understand. But you, whoever you are, know what's happening. You realize that the Absolute has revealed itself to you. And your heart bursts open and your mind becomes completely quiet. And one realizes a state of humility, in a state of awe and humility, awe and humility, awe and humility. And this is the most important aspect of the deep transformation that's possible for all of us, is to be brought to our knees in the face of the majesty and the magnitude of the Absolute. The mind is rendered helpless, and the ego is rendered completely irrelevant. So if this kind of experience is deep enough, it's got to be deep enough, but if it's deep enough, we will never fully recover. Even that when the mind comes back and starts functioning again, when the ego puts its clothes back on, it will never be the same. So much will return to the way it was, but something will be changed forever, because now we know who we truly are. And we will have been humbled by the magnitude of it all in a way that changes our life. And that's what transcending the ego is all about. That's what it means. Doesn't mean that the ego dies forever, never to return again, because that hardly ever happens. But it means that we've seen and known beyond the small self in a way that we can never recover from. We have been wounded, so to speak, by the love of God, in a way that's quite dramatic when it's deep. So this humbles us. It humbles us, and what happens then is that as clever as we are, or as clever as we become, as intellectually sophisticated as we can become, we will know in a way that's hard to explain that the mind is only the mind. We'll know on one hand, from an evolutionary point of view, that the mind is the greatest gift of evolution. That the human mind is the greatest gift of evolution to all of us. And we'll be so grateful that we've got a good one, especially if we know how to use it. But at the same time, we're going to know that the mind is only the mind, and the mind is not who we are, and the mind is not God. We'll know that the mind is a relative instrument. When used skillfully, can help us do glorious things and live a meaningful life. But we'll know in a way that's hard to otherwise. We'll know what the mind is not, and that, in my opinion, is the difference between enlightenment and unenlightenment. When you awaken deeply, you know what the mind is not, and you're always going to know. Once your heart has opened deeply enough to the magnitude of this absolute reality, you'll never forget it. So knowing what the mind is not, in the way I'm trying to clarify, makes all the difference in the world. So, to continue, so when we awaken to integral consciousness and awaken to gain a capacity for integral cognition, we become deeper thinkers, more complex thinkers. This helps us to see and understand reality in ways we never could have otherwise. And this is a great gift. It's a kind of enlightenment. It's a cognitive enlightenment, an intellectual enlightenment, a philosophical enlightenment. And it changes everything. But it doesn't liberate our souls, and it doesn't liberate our egos. Our egos are still going to be trapped in the mind, in the relative. And one of the difficult things here is that as we become more sophisticated intellectually and philosophically, as we take the leap from first to second tier cognition, the capacity of our mind grows and leaps and bounds. We become so much smarter. We begin to see reality so much from so many more perspectives than we ever could have imagined possible. We see more, we feel more, we know more, we understand more. And this is profound and miraculous and extraordinary and meaningful and good. But inevitably, the more powerful our mind becomes, the ego is going to get stronger. Because with the emergence of integral cognition, you know that you're seeing more of reality than a lot of other people are. You don't even have to say it, but it's because of this leap from first to second tier cognition. You know it, and that's not bad. It's all good. But the point is that if we're not enlightened, or we're not inspiring to be enlightened, if we're not inspiring to liberate ourselves from pride and arrogance and the superiority of the small self, this heightened capacity of cognition is going to pump up our small self and empower the small self in good ways, but also in ways that are spiritually not helpful at all. So this is a delicate balancing act. Without awakening to integral cognition and cultivating the capacity for integral cognition, we're liable to be unknowingly lost in an interpretive framework that is less than suitable, that's less than accurate. So when we awaken to integral cognition, when we take the leap from first to second tier thinking capacities, the difference is so profound. It's so profound. It's unbelievable. It's amazing. It's a form of enlightenment. But how do we stay humble as we gain so much more intellectual power? How do we stay on our knees? That's the question I wanted to ask. I don't have an answer to that question, but I want to bring up the question because it's such an important question.